Hi, I'm Diane, your host of Epic Conversations, and we are continuing. This is our last discussion with Ken Davis. We have been feasting on the Constitution of the United States, and it has been awesome. So you are going to enjoy this episode. Ken, we're talking today about the Bill of Rights.
Yes.
And you have much more to say on the Bill of Rights, but it is the first 10 amendments of the U.S. Constitution, and it guarantees civil rights. It guarantees liberties to the individual, like freedom of speech, freedom of press, and freedom of religion. And I know there's more, but you know them and not me. And you're going to tell us all.
There are more, and the first 10 amendments. So let's also be mindful. There were people who signed the Declaration.
Okay.
George Mason in particular, who refused to sign the original Constitution because there was what we would now call negative liberties, and I'll explain that in a second.
Okay.
There were none. There were no law, nothing as part of the Constitution to protect the people from the government.
Interesting. Nothing to protect the people from the government.
Right.
In what, the first?
In the initial, the first,
initial
5 articles, 6 articles
of the Constitution.
Of the Constitution.
Okay.
And so he refused to sign the Constitution without them. And then, of course, he goes back to his state and with others, and they start to work on amending the Constitution, adding these first 10 amendments.
Because what that tells me, it's a two-way street.
Yeah.
It's we the people and the government and the people. It's like a relationship.
Yeah. And I used the term negative liberties. And what I mean by that is here are areas that the government cannot encroach upon the people's rights with.
Oh.
And so when you read through the first 10 amendments, that is primarily what they're saying. Here's what the government cannot do. They can't prevent freedom of religion. They can't. You understand? They can't prevent us from the right of self-defense. So they were called negative liberties.
Okay, that's good. So tell us some of the amendments.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we talked in one of the other episodes. We talked about the laws of God, the laws of nature, and nature's God.
Right.
And so what you see in some of these first 10 amendments is now we're going to line out, we're going to draw out. Here are these laws that show up in nature, or that God says, thou shalt not.
Right.
And we're going to actually lay them out in these first 10 amendments. So I'm going to read a couple.
Okay, good. Let's do a couple.
So the First Amendment, it's funny you mentioned 3 of the rights in the First Amendment. There was also...
Okay, I got 3.
That's right.
I got 3.
You're already better than most of America with that. Most people can't name more than a couple, right? And so you mentioned free press, but there's also the right to petition our government for grievances.
Now I bet not too many people know about that.
And then right to assemble. And again, that's a law that shows up in nature, right? You can run with the herd that you choose. That's what you see within nature. Same is true for humans.
Oh.
So let's read the first one. Congress may not make any laws that sets up any religion. You know what? I'm sorry. So in the book that we use in our class, there's a gentleman named Mike Holler. There's a shout out to Mike Holler. That he actually wrote what's called the Constitution Made Easy. He basically took the Constitution and wrote it using today's English as amended. So I'm actually reading from his version.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good to know.
So Congress may not make any law that sets up any religion or interferes with any religious practice. Congress may not make any law that diminishes the freedom of speech or the freedom of press or the right of the people to assemble peacefully. Peacefully. Or the right of the people to petition the government to make things right if it has caused them harm. Okay, that's the First Amendment. And so I love the fact that we pointed out peacefully. Yes. It is absolutely a right for people to come together and peacefully assemble, even if it is due to a grievance. Even if it's due to a grievance. People need to have the right to run with the herd they choose to run with.
So, like when they have the rioters, that's not peaceful.
Right. And then a free press. I don't know if we see much of a free press these days, because the press if you want to look at the aisle, the press on either side of the aisle seems to present an agenda. Right? That is not the free flow of information. That is not them giving us the news. That is them making the news.
Well, there's a difference between giving, the news and making news.
Yes, and we're seeing it. Right? They are presenting an agenda, and so so that First Amendment actually has 5 rights in it that every American should know. Be ready to defend and assert in that First Amendment.
Defend and assert ourselves.
Well, defend our rights.
Defend our own rights.
Yes, and where necessary, assert them. Be on offense.
Oh, okay. Offense versus defense.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So another one. Let's read the second. Right. That's one.
Let's go.
That's always under fire.
Let's go. The second. This is the Second Amendment of the Bill of Rights.
The people have the right to own and carry firearms, and it may not be violated because a well-equipped militia is necessary for a state to remain secure and free.
Now that reminds me, the militia of the movie The Patriot.
Okay, yes. Who was in the militia in the movie The Patriot?
Oh, Jesus. I know his name.
Oh, all right, not people. Not necessary. Not when I say that, not necessarily. Not the actors.
Oh, okay. Not the
actual character. But what people did you see taking part in the militia?
The people, a lot of them came from churches.
Churches or farms. They were
the people.
Yes.
They were the ones out in the countryside. Those are the ones doing the things. And I remember the preacher would take off his robe, and they called them the Black Robe Regiment, because when he took off his black robe, underneath was his, what do you call it? His fighting army outfit, and he was like ready to go, and he's going to go to war for our country.
Yeah, and so in the 1700s, 1800s, the militia was anyone capable, men and young men.
Oh, okay, men.
It was men, anyone capable of handling a firearm, and they would train, and that. So if your town, if you lived in a town of 500 men, and they are of a certain age, they would go and train with the militia and learn how to fire a musket, right? Learn because you needed to teach every able-bodied man how to defend and protect his community. And if necessary, then the state could actually call up the militia if the state needed defending against an encroachment of an enemy.
What do we have today?
Well, today, and that's really long, but today we have what's called our National Guard. And the National Guard is, and I'm trying to remember the year, but that is what the government put in place of every able-bodied male citizen. So they put in the National Guard. So 1930-ish or so. So 1903 is when they created the National Guard. And now our states can call up the National Guard. I don't know how I feel about that. I think I'd rather every able-bodied man be part of what is called militia. What we call militia today is not what they saw as militia. It's not.
No, because this reminds me, you're saying militia is ownership. Versus passing it off to somebody else. We're taking responsibility. Yes. This is our country, our land, our militia, and we're training people.
Yeah, and today we see it as some kind of fringe, wacky group of people out in the middle of the forest somewhere, learning how they're going to, take over the government. And so it is not what they meant.
It's to defend and protect what is rightfully ours.
And that is a law of nature. Right? It is always lawful to protect what is your property and what is your family.
I mean, that's instinct, like
Exactly.
it really is.
Yeah. And so we've got these. First, how about we do one more?
Let's do one more.
Let's do one more. This one, I'm actually going to read the original. This is the Fifth Amendment, and you've heard someone say, "I plead the Fifth," right? Plead the Fifth. There's a whole lot more to it than that. So no person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime, unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in the cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia, when in actual service in time of war or public danger. We know that our military, there's a set of laws that governs our military.
Mm-hmm.
Nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, I plead the Fifth, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. That last one is big. And we see all the time where you have a bureaucracy that comes in, and they will actually take someone's property. So let's say you've got some rare beetle on your property, but your property, as you initially own it, let's say is worth $1 million. And we've seen this actually happen. Government comes in and says, well, you've got this rare beetle on your property. And so you need to now your property has become part of a preserve. So you got to keep every tree on this property. You cannot alter this property in any way. And therefore, what happens then is your property drops in value, right? So we just read, they can't do that without just compensation. But in many cases, they don't compensate someone. So your property went from, and again, we've seen cases of this, your property went from worth $1 million down to $30,000.
How can they do
the government should come in and compensate you properly because it is their determination that your property can no longer be properly taken care of and kept up to maintain its value or even increase its value. And that happens a lot. There was some years ago, not very long ago, where they came in, and if it rained and there was a certain amount of water that sat on your land, they would consider that federal land because there's this much water accumulated on it, and so they were actually taking people's land that way without compensation. Probably the biggest case I think we saw was the ranch down in Nevada. I don't know if you remember that. There was like a standoff between the people of that town protecting this one owner of this ranch as the government was trying to actually come in and encroach upon his land. This happened in Nevada. So again, these are things that, listen, the government, based on the Fifth Amendment, cannot do.
And these amendments, the Bill of Rights, part of the amendments that are part of the Bill of Rights are part of the Constitution.
Correct. They are the first 10 amendments.
And they can't do that.
No, but again, if we don't know, then we don't defend what is rightfully given to us.
So it's ignorance of people a lot of times that make a big difference in whether they can defend and stand up for their rights. So they really need to know. We need to know as the people what's in this Constitution and why we should protect it and why we should vote according to laws that do protect it and for the Constitution. The Constitution, we talked before, has been around since the 1700s.
Yeah,
that's it.
Let's start a movement.
Yeah. Oh, Ken, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for teaching us. It's been a joy. Oh, yeah. A joy for all of us. And I'm so glad that you could join us. And I hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have. And please subscribe to this channel. Share it with a friend and get the word out. This is awesome. We have one more episode coming up with Ken. And in the meantime, have an epic day in the Lord.